say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our freedom. Yeah, fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our freedom. Yeah, I said fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that are taking our freedom. We don't even need them. I never celebrate the times that are taking our freedom.
Man, I am fired up. I'm fired up, man, because we are at war. It's not a kinetic war, but make no mistake, this is a war. For years, shitposters, trolls, bloggers, podcasters, and vloggers have been under attack. They've been kicked off of social media, depersoned, and financially broken. The bend is always the same. Libertarians, conservatives, anarchists, populists, and every other anti-establishment personality that refuses to conform to the status quo centrism of perpetual war, mass murdering women and children for the heinous crime of being born in a foreign nation, perpetual debt, 27 trillion and growing at an exponential rate, economic fascism, corporate state cartels and enforced monopolies, mass surveillance, censorship, and blacklists are destroyed through a concerted effort of the big tech media banking trifecta. That's not to mention intelligence agencies. Even little old me finds myself under attack as of recent. In May of 2020, year zero began to hit its stride. It wasn't perfect. Recording podcasts out on the road is challenging, and I've had my share of quality issues with sound and signal. But growth started ticking up rapidly. I received an email from Apple that I found encouraging. Year zero had breached the top 75 in the genre of politics. That's not too bad for a no-name trucker constantly struggling with scheduling and energy. But suddenly in late July, the 4 and 5 star ratings I'd been receiving came to a halt, and a barrage of 1-star ratings and a few bad reviews hit my Apple rating. I dropped from a solid 4.5 star podcast to a 2.5 star podcast, nowhere near the top 100 anymore. This appears to be a concerted effort, and it seems to be ramped up with the censorship of other voices by big tech since the election of Joe Biden. The cathedral and its androids want dissident voices silenced, especially voices like mine reaching blue-collar Americans. My anti-intellectual assault on their narratives and revised history relates to the truck drivers, construction workers, welders and pipe fitters, mechanics, drunkards, and deplorables. The last thing they want is a coalition of gritty, no-nonsense men and women rejecting their waspy, overeducated sophistry and demanding complete freedom from their blood-soaked regulatory grip. Help me fight back against these monsters. Go to your favorite podcast feed, subscribe, give me a 5-star rating, and review Year Zero. We can push these ratings back up and tell the elites to go to hell. It's up to all of us to support each and every creator that we rely on. Donate $1 or $2 a month to your favorite creators. Grant 5-star ratings to all of them. Give them reviews. And share all of our work as we continue to build our brands and fight the propaganda war in the interests of our children and grandchildren. You can shoot me a donation at paypal.me/Tommy Salmons. Subscribe to my Substack, TommySalmons.substack.com. Check me out on the Libertarian Institute it's libertarianinstitute.org/year zero. And just show us also support. We're out here working really hard. We're doing all we can to fight back against this propaganda machine. And like I said, these blood-soaked monsters, man. So enjoy the podcast.
Working up on Capitol Hill, I kill more people with my pen than your guns ever will. Yeah, where the bankers and bomb makers are the people I truly serve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is Year Zero. Thanks for sitting through that introduction. That's going to be a regular. And thanks, Tom Burton, for the music. I'd also like to thank Ryan Bunting for the new artwork. And you can find all of Ryan Bunting's talents at ryanbunting.com. And speaking of Ryan Bunting, guess who today's guest is? Mr. Ryan Bunting. What is going on, my man?
Not too much. Just another day in the life. You know how it is.
I do know how it is.
The dollar is becoming more and more worthless. The people are getting restless.
People are getting very restless.
The price of 9 mil has fucking doubled since last year.
God damn, don't you know it? I was like, man, I'm just going to start reloading. I'm like, fuck it.
I have been looking at reloading setups. I want a progressive one so I can just.
Yeah. Well, my buddy had a reloading setup for 40 cal years ago. And we both had 40 cals, but I don't have that gun anymore. And I didn't get that reloading set from him. So I'm kind of stuck without that. But yeah, I definitely want to start looking at that. But that's kind of a good, segue into why you're here. We're here to talk about subversive technologies and all the bullshit that's been going on. And, we've seen this coming for a long time. It's been small, started with like YouTube purges years ago, YouTube creators getting kicked off of the platform. Despite however much money they were making YouTube or themselves. And it's just continued, into 2021, and it's getting more blatant. And I remember reading a story in 2011, and this is part of the reason I never give these platforms credit as being private companies, because I remember the story from 2011 before Edward Snowden even came out. And it was talking about how the CIA had not merged, but was using Facebook and Twitter to spy on American citizens. And I was like, well, obviously these companies are state contractors. Mm-hmm. And so and then I read a couple of weeks ago, I ran into a study that was conducted last year, and it was talking about the amount of defense contracts given out to big tech companies, and Microsoft led the way with 5,000 defense contracts. Google was in second place with something like 684 defense contracts. So it's obvious that these companies are not secure for the average person.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, with everything that's going on recently, with liberty-minded Facebook accounts getting banned for no legitimate reason given, the whole Parler thing, no matter how you feel about the platform, that kind of shit should worry you. And it's just, it's only getting worse.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, they're speeding up. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but Project Veritas has released a couple of videos from Twitter whistleblowers, and
they got Jack Dorsey on video.
Yeah, and that attorney that was on Joe Rogan podcast with Tim Pool and Jack Dorsey. Yep. Yeah, what was her name? Vidya, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
vagina something. So yeah, she was caught on there, and they're just talking about ramping up the censoring. And I know a lot of us, have started moving to different places. We got our group in Signal, and I have a Telegram account. I was looking at this pocketnet.app. I was kind of checking it out. It's still a little clunky. It's really slow.
I couldn't finish setting up my account, so I have to go back to that and give it another try. I figured that they were probably getting a ton of extra traffic because Tim Pool had mentioned it. So they were probably getting just a shitload more traffic than they were really expecting.
Yeah. Yeah. I got mine set up, but I think I've only successfully been able to post one time. I've tried posting 3 different times on there just to see how it works. And it just, I couldn't get it to complete.
Yeah, there's bound to be some growing pains with these alternative platforms, but hopefully one kind of cements itself as like the go-to.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's going to be so much that. I think it's going to be people are going to be spread out among several different platforms, and as one gets taken down, another one pops up. I mean,
That's the ideal situation, you know. That's kind of like it's the same application of like having 3D printable guns. Is that if one person in the operation gets taken down or one website gets taken down, 7 more will pop up in its place. You know, the whole point is that we need to become like the Hydra. You cut off one head and 2 more sprout right up.
right? Yeah, and well, and we've seen this in history, um, as government has tried to regulate companies out of business, and even attack Standard Oil with antitrust, or go after these IBM with antitrust suits. By the time it's all complete, they react way too late. They just don't, because of the bureaucracy. They can't keep up with the technology as fast as it's producing. And so I think with big tech, um, Twitter, Facebook, Google working hand in hand with the government the way that they do, that they're not going to be able to keep up with as fast as people are moving going forward. And I think that's a good thing, because people are so determined at being free that they're going to continue to take actions on their own, separate from the permission granters, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's a really good point.
Well, I mean, and you've seen it with hacking. You see it. I mean, even with bank robbers, and they're always one step ahead.
Yeah.
They just can't. They can't keep up. This whole Minority Report idea. There was a police department in Florida that was doing this, where they were scanning people's social media that lived in particular parts of the city, and they were trying to determine whether or not somebody was going to commit a crime, and so they would go and preemptively arrest them.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah, it's just creepy shit. And so they're trying to keep up. They are trying to keep up, and they're trying to stay one step ahead, but I just don't think they have the manpower to deal with. I mean, you look at what's going on right now with GameStop, I mean, they just have no way. Yeah. They have no way of keeping up with us. If those that are truly determined to remain free are going to find a way to be free. Harry Brown wrote that great book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, and people use that as a blueprint, to say, yes, I want to live free.
Yeah, and you know what? It kind of goes to something that I've been saying about software piracy for years. Because like every couple of years, there's like something new where they're like, oh, that's uncrackable. You're not going to be able to pirate games anymore, or you're not going to be able to pirate Photoshop anymore. Like Denuvo came out and they're like, it's at the root level. There's nothing you can do. But what these companies always underestimate is that where there's a will, there's a way. And that sounds so like terribly cliche, but in like the software cracking world, no matter what fucking encryption or whether it reaches out to the internet, whatever you do, someone will find a way around it. For example, like Adobe products like Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, all that shit have some pretty strict anti-piracy measures in place. And the way that they get around it is there's a crack package, which what it does is it convinces your software that the address that it needs to look for a valid registration of your software is 127.0.0.1. And for those who don't know shit about computers or networking, that's your home local IP address. That's just like the basic default. So what it's telling the software is that Adobe's registration server exists on your computer, and it's saying, "Oh yeah, dude, this is totally legit. Go ahead." So you open it up and it says, "Oh, welcome back. Thank you for purchasing Photoshop," or whatever the hell it is. It tricks it using its own supposedly, strong anti-piracy, and it has always been that way.
Well, and there's always been the pirate side of the internet, the torrent side of the internet, where people have been spreading movies and music for years. I mean, I think the first time I ever heard about it was Napster.
Yeah.
And so they've always been one step behind everybody. And at the rate that technology is advancing, like I said, there's just no way they and then you see these stories. I heard Eric July did a video on an article he read by a guy named Nathan Popper, I think. And obviously all they can do is try to demonize anybody who's trying to subvert their control and their centralization as white supremacist or, terrorists or whatever else they're trying to do.
Extremist.
Right.
That's like the word du jour as of lately.
Seditionist.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, no, you misspelled secession. But so you kind of took it upon yourself when I told you I wanted to do this podcast, and you said you were going to do some research and you were going to find out a bunch of information. So what have we come across in the last couple of days?
So we've got the obvious things like what's going on with Google, Facebook, Twitter. But I actually went back a little further and found a lot of things that I actually remember happening, but I didn't have the same lens that I kind of look at the world through now. So at the time I was just like, that's kind of funny, and then just moved on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think before we go into this, I actually wanted to read the Wikipedia definition of subversion, because I thought this was kind of interesting. Subversion refers to a process by which the values and principles of a system in place are contradicted or reversed in an attempt to transform the established social order and its structures of power, authority, hierarchy, and social norms. Subversion can be described as an attack on the public morale and, quote, the will to resist intervention are the products of combined political and social class loyalties which are usually attached to national symbols. Following penetration and parallel with the forced disintegration of political and social institutions of the state, these loyalties may be detached and transferred to the political or ideological cause of the aggressor. So it's funny that in this definition, it implies that it's a negative thing against the state. But what we're seeing now is that the state and big tech are actively engaged in it against the public.
Yeah. I mean, well, and it's okay. Their intervention into our lives is not subversion of our freedom. It is for our own good. It's for our security. They're here. They're trying to keep us safe.
Oh, of course. It's always about safety. Well, just like double masks, double penetration, all that shit. It's for the greater good.
Right. And, but it's always going to come back to double think, whenever you're looking at it. I remember that essay, which I point to a lot, by George Orwell. And it was called, I want to say it was called Politics and the English Language. And he talks about, and the entire essay is talking about how the political class, the parasite class, if you will,
mm-hmm.
uses language in such a way that it's actually subverting language. It's actually misrepresenting language. And that's kind of what this whole series I'm doing with Coop is about. It's about how you take the philosophical and you convert it to the ideological, which the ideological depends on subjectivity, on conceptualism. And so you're talking about kind of like the postmodern use of language to create emotion based action for something that was a tool. So your tool then becomes the way, right? So
Yeah.
like, so you see this with gun control. You have a tool, gun control, and it's taken out of context as to what the gun community is all about, and it is considered to be a murderous way of life by just owning this tool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we're dealing with, but on a technological or on a virtual level.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned, and as everyone knows, that Google is not just like some big open free good guy that's just like, oh, all we do is aggregate the news. We know that they're up to some shady shit. As far back as 2016, we know that they have at least 9 separate blacklists. The first of which is autocomplete. When you go to Google, you type in, like, let's say, like, I'm actually going to go to Google right now just to see. If I do Donald Trump is, and it gives me a list of nonsense. And if I do like Joe Biden is, I get Biden administration news, live updates, a link to whitehouse.gov, a link to some inspirational tweet on Twitter. And the Donald Trump opposite is California man made pipe bombs. I'm not even shitting you. Some Trump aides stuck with him till the end. Now they're screwed. Palm Beach reviewing whether Donald Trump is breaking rules by living at Mar-a-Lago. Everything related in this search is negative, and everything in the Joe Biden search is positive. So that's the first blacklist that Google has.
Yeah, and I remember when that was going on in 2016 with the Clinton campaign.
Yep, absolutely. So, like, again, we've known about this for a while, but it's becoming almost insulting how obvious it is.
Yeah.
So then the second blacklist is YouTube, because since Google owns YouTube, they basically do the same thing. They control the algorithms. They control what gets suggested to you. And they've flat out just removed people that they perceive as bad actors. I mean, I don't know if you ever used to watch Sargon of Akkad back in the day, but he was kind of like a centrist liberal type. But because he spoke out against woke culture, that was insufferable, and they had to remove it. So he was just deplatformed.
I don't think that's what he got removed for. He had called. It was actually funny. He called the alt-righters, the white nationalists, white niggers. And that's
God forbid.
And that's what he got. That's what he got kicked off of Patreon for and everything.
Jeez.
So he was insulting an ideology that is considered disgusting by turning their language back on them, and he got kicked off.
He got kicked off, which is phenomenal.
And the guy that hosted him still has a YouTube channel today, if I remember right. Because he was being interviewed by somebody, and he had said it, and it was on some small channel too. This is when he lost his Patreon and everything. Now he has a podcast, from what I understand, called The Locust Eaters. He's
basically just got his own platform now.
Oh, really? I haven't even checked it out. I should probably check it out.
Yeah, I think he's kind of just like, here's my website, here's where my stuff is, you can get it all here.
Right.
Yeah, and then Google has the account blacklist, which, if you've ever actually read Google's terms of service, it's very vague, it's very non-specific, and this really applies to the big three, your Google, Facebook, Twitter. All three of them have very vague things where they say things like harmful speech. Well, what is harmful speech? They don't define it. And that's because it's liquid. It can change at any fucking time. And they can just determine that saying, hey, I think that people should be more free and I think the government should do less stuff. They can say, well, that's harmful speech.
Well, and John Brennan now does.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, we're terrorists. We're organizing right now. That's what this is. Podcasts count as organizing insurrections nowadays. So, just add another list that we're on. Cool. And then you have outside of the autocorrect account blacklist, you have just the straight up news blacklist, which is where they determine which sources are trustworthy. They determine which ones aren't. They exclude search results. So basically, if you search for a certain thing, if they think that it's not okay, they just simply won't show it to you. As far back as like 2006, obviously around that time, they were actually filtering out like conservative blogs, conservative websites, and they were just straight up removing anything from search results that was even remotely critical of Islam. And then you have their whole AdWords program, which again, if they find you doing anything that's pee-pee-poo-poo-matic, they can shut off your account. They can see, like, if you had $10,000 of ad revenue that you were going to get paid during your next pay cycle, if they find that you did something, that they didn't like, they would cancel your AdWords account and they would just seize whatever you had left in there. So they're like, all right, you're done. Sorry about like the 5 years of work you put into building your brand. You're done, and we seize your stuff because that's what you agreed to in our vague terms of service. They actually, at one point, it was back in 2016, they had shut down search results for anything related to payday loans, except somebody called them out and said, well, Google, aren't you like one of the primary investors in lendup.com, which is a payday loan? So basically, they were shutting out their competition, and they're like, well, look, we think that payday loans are predatory, even though we fund one of the largest ones in the country. So we just want to keep people from being preyed upon, even though we're directly benefiting from it, which is just absurd. And then, it goes all the way down to just search results in general. The fact that they have basically quadruple the number of pages indexed compared to the next major search engine, they ultimately control the flow of information to the general public. Back in the day, like, there was no like, oh, just Google it. Like, Google it was not a thing.
Right.
It was still a small search engine, and it's reached the point that they're kind of like ubiquitous. They're just accepted that it's like nobody uses fucking Ask Jeeves or Yahoo,
Bing,
or Bing. Yeah, Bing indexes I think like 15 billion web pages, something like that. They might be up to like 20 or so.
Yeah.
Google indexes 50 billion plus.
Oh, wow.
So they simply just have drastically more web pages indexed and therefore more data to use, which is why they were able to be like, hey, if we control the flow of information based on what people search, we can influence elections. And that's essentially what they did. Like you said, back in 2016 with the Clinton campaign, and it 100% happened again from 2016 to current.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying.
No, it is.
We all have a Gmail account. Some of us probably even have fucking bank information on a Google Pay or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and now's the time to be weary of that.
Right. And, I think like what I'm doing, at least personally, is I'm moving all my banking to a credit union in the little town I live in,
Yeah.
and, because that money goes back and gets it reinvested in the community. And so it's like, okay, well, I can at least start acting locally in that way. And when it comes to like my Gmail, I'm starting to move everything over to Proton Mail, you know?
Yeah, I did that about a week and a half ago. Anything I had on Gmail, I switched to my Proton Mail account. Anything important, right off of Gmail. I archived all of my mail, backed it up so that I have it in a physical file that I can access, and I'm blanking out those accounts permanently.
Right, right. And yeah, so I'll only be using my Gmail to invite people to Zoom meetings. That'll pretty
Yeah.
much be its only purpose for me will be that, you know,
Yeah.
because I just have no other use for it. You know, whatever, you know, documents I get from my car insurance or whatever, you know, along those lines, they can keep coming to me through Gmail, and I'll use Proton Mail for anything else that I want to, you know, communicate, you know, no matter if I think it's shady or not shady, or, you know, anti-government or not anti-government. I just
Yeah.
I don't care for anybody being that involved in my life.
Absolutely. And you know, it's like it's funny because we've kind of seen this happening. Like we knew at that point in probably the early 2000s when it was like, okay, Google's kind of a big fucking deal. They're getting huge. They've got all these products where it's like, oh, look, we have mail, we have documents, we have file sharing, we have all these things. And at first it looks really great, at least for me back then, because I was not initiated into Liberty yet. And I'm like, oh, great. One-stop shopping. I can have all of my shit in one place. And like present me is like, oh, you fucking idiot. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, but you weren't, you know, nobody thinks about it until they start, you know, really digging into it and figuring out what's going on and how dangerous it can be for an individual. You can, if all your stuff is in one location, it's extremely convenient, you know?
Yeah.
But if all your stuff is in one location, you can be depersoned really fast.
Real quick. Absolutely. So while we're on the topic of Google, I would like to recommend to your listeners an alternative. So if you use like Google Drive for file sharing, or Google Docs, Google Sheets, you know, for like Excel spreadsheet type stuff, if you use any of that nonsense, download physical copies of it. And there is a website called CryptPad, CryptPad.fr. It basically emulates your Google Drive, your Google Docs, your Google Sheets, but it's completely encrypted end to end. You can choose who to share it with, whether that be multiple people, one person, or just yourself. And it's basically to the point where if you forget your password, you're kind of fucked, because they're like, we don't even know. We don't know what your password is, so if you forget it, your stuff's lost.
Right.
Which, you know, it puts more of the onus on you. But if you want to share files securely and you want to have things that aren't, you know, Google Drive documents can show up in searches. There are search engines specifically for looking for public Google Drive files. So you might have uploaded something to Google Drive that you didn't realize you even set to public, and people can be basically searching for it and using it. CryptPad does have a limit. You know, a free account, you get like 1 gig of space. But I think they have monthly plans as low as $5 for a pretty significant increase in file storage and stuff. So in times like these, if you are building a Freedom Cell, or if you just want to back up your 3D printer gun files, whatever you have, CryptPad is probably the place to do it.
Well, right, but the thing is, and people need to understand this, when you're trading the ease and the convenience of using Google Drive or using the cloud, and you're having to take responsibility of keeping track of your password for CryptPad, And you may have to pay $5 a month for however many gigabytes, but these people aren't selling your information. So the only way they're making their money is if you are subscribing to them, you know? And
Yeah.
yeah, there are places like Signal that work straight off of donations. I was looking at a place earlier called LiberPay to start, getting donations from my followers, and they work completely off of donations. They don't take a percentage of your money and stuff like that. So, there are alternatives to CryptPad, but
For sure.
are they going to be as secure as CryptPad? Are you going to feel as safe with the files that you're uploading and that you're keeping and that you're sending across the internet as you do with CryptPad? So you have to weigh all of these issues.
Exactly. I actually believe I'm going to upgrade my CryptPad account so that I can move. I have a bunch of 3D printer files and just useful stuff that are currently on a less secure platform. Not Google, but still a less secure and prone to censorship platform. So I will be porting that stuff over. And plus, the more support that these sites get, the better the packages get. If enough people move over and use the $5 a month package or whatever, they might go, oh, well, we can actually give them more for the $5 package because we have so many, and that seems to be the level that people want to use. So cool. So again, I mean, we get to engage in markets even when we're fighting against mass censorship.
Right. Yeah. And, another thing to do is, move money into Bitcoin. And, there's all kinds of things you can do that is subversive of the system. If you enjoy the art, for the new art I have for the podcast, the Federal Reserve with the slaves walking in front of, Ryan's the one who designed that for me and did a great job on it. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad it turned out good.
Oh, it looks great, man. And I love the reactions I'm getting to it too. So people are like, wow, this looks quite Soviet. And it's like, yeah, there's a point behind that,
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Yeah. But when it comes to backdooring, we were talking about Bing and Yahoo and these other search engines that don't get used. I use DuckDuckGo.
As do I.
How secure am I on DuckDuckGo?
DuckDuckGo is basically the best alternative you can get security-wise for simply using a search engine. Mm-hmm. There's several other layers that are still insecure basically every time you access the internet. And this isn't intended to like freak anybody out or anything, but like DuckDuckGo is great because they keep no tracking cookies. They don't care that you're searching for, lesbian Asian fisting at 3 a.m. They don't care. It's not their business. They
How'd
just
you
say,
know?
I just assumed. But
do you work for DuckDuckGo?
No, I'm a Fed. No, but yeah, that's what's great about DuckDuckGo is that they don't track anything. They don't, that's why you don't get any like targeted ads like you do on Google, where like, you're talking to your wife on the phone on the way home from work one day, and you're like, oh man, I was really thinking about like maybe grabbing a hot dog or something. And then like you open up your phone, you go on Google, and it's just like, oh, fucking hot dog emporium 5 miles away. And it's like, DuckDuckGo doesn't do that. So it is smart to use that as a browser. Your next step would be as a search engine, excuse me. Your next step would be to use a different browser. I would recommend Tor. Your connection speeds are kind of capped by using Tor because of the way the infrastructure is, but it is more secure. And then the final layer is using a VPN of some sort. So like VPN is where you can convince the internet that you're actually in fucking, Uzbekistan. The Tor browser is like, I'm nobody, And then DuckDuckGo is like, well, I don't care that you're nobody. Here's the thing you're looking for. So that's basically your 3 layers of like internet access. VPNs are getting cheaper. Tor browser's free. DuckDuckGo is free. It's just a website. But the important thing to remember is that VPNs aren't the end-all be-all. There's only so far you can go. Just like with software piracy, if somebody wants to crack your software, they will. And just like with accessing the internet, if someone wants to figure out where and who you are, they can. You can, however, make it significantly more difficult. And in times like these, it's probably a good idea to do that.
Right. Now, I've seen some VPNs as low as $2.99 a month. So they're not extremely expensive at all.
It's also good if you want to watch like British television. You can just convince Netflix that you live in the UK and you get Channel 4, all that shit.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. If you want to watch Japanese Netflix, you can just switch your VPN. Hey, I'm in fucking Hokkaido. What do we got? You know?
Oh, I didn't know you got to choose. I thought it was just randomly like.
It varies. It varies from service to service. But like most VPNs, at least in my experience, you can basically choose which location you want to connect from.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which is another handy tool. It's probably how the Fed boys were like, oh, we've got all these IP addresses from Russia supporting the Trump campaign.
Right.
Like, no, they're actually IP addresses from Washington pretending to be Russia.
Yeah, no, that's what I was just thinking of. I was trying to remember the name of the program that they have that was revealed in the WikiLeaks Vault 7 that revealed that they could do that, but I can't remember the name of the program that they use. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's very well known that they can convince anybody that they are, from any other country, doing all this nonsense that they're doing. And, I mean, you look at the history of intelligence and the way that they've operated and InQtel and COINTELPRO and all these different aspects of the intelligence agencies and the way that they, the FBI framing, mentally handicapped people for, terrorist plots just to keep themselves on the dole. I mean, to make themselves look useful. It's just absolutely ridiculous that we're at a point now that if you even say, hey, I think that John Sullivan cat that was at the Capitol was a fucking Fed. A bunch of people that know and revealed COINTELPRO fucking 30 years ago will look at you and be, oh yeah, that's bullshit. The FBI says yada, yada, yada. It's like the FBI was your enemy before Donald Trump was in office. What fucking happened to you people?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fucking amazing what happens once it's your guy in power, It's just like the fucking, the BLM thing. It was like, oh, ACAB. And I'm like, yeah, finally, they fucking get it. And now they're like, these insurrectionists need to be arrested. And it's like, by the fucking police that you were saying should have been defunded last year? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, like that kid, it was just revealed that kid called the feds on his dad, who was
my God.
He was what was he, a 3%er or an oath keeper, one of the two, and he called the feds on his dad and had his dad locked up. And he goes, I generally agree all cops are bad. I just figured on a federal level that they wouldn't be as bad as locally.
Oh my God.
It's like, no, dude, no. They're worse.
They're worse.
You're totally missing the point. Like, how dare you be more loyal to the state than you are to your own family? Shut your fucking mouth and get on with your business.
I hope that dude used his one phone call to call his wife and be like, take that little fucking cocksucker out of the will right now.
Yeah, I think he got kicked out.
And tell him that I'm fucking waiting for him when I get out of here.
Well, what's even more disgusting is he's raised over $100,000 off of it.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. It's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you people, man? You're cheering this kid on for turning in his own father. Like
And
that's some
and that right
serious.
there is that is the fucking like that is the distilled pure form of the subversion that the state and the cathedral are doing right now. They are convincing kids to turn in their parents, for fuck's sake, over what? Over what color the fucking guy sitting in the fucking puppet seat is.
Yeah,
My
well,
God.
that's 15,000 fucking hours of government schooling.
Yep,
It's finally paying off for these fucking people.
absolutely.
It only took
Yuri
them,
Bezmenov called it, man.
yeah. I mean, it took them a few generations, but they got to them.
That's what he said. He's like, it would take 2 to 3 generations to jam into the soft heads of American youth communist socialist propaganda.
Well, and I, a lot of it to me, it's a result of post 9/11 American culture. If
Yeah,
you if you look at, I mean, I'm guessing you're probably about my age, maybe a little bit younger, but I'm 41. I was born in 79, so I'm a Gen Xer, and our generation, Gen X, is very independent. Like most of the anarchists that I know are Gen Xers, and we were running the streets, doing our own thing from dusk till dawn, dawn to dusk, all the time, always gone. Parents kicking us out of the house first thing in the morning. Don't come back until it's dark outside, yada, yada, yada. And then suddenly 9/11 happened. You had helicopter parenting, totally fucked up the mentality of the youth.
yeah. It's wild because I'm technically a millennial. I'm like right on the cusp. I was born in '89.
Okay.
But despite that, I do not consider myself a '90s kid. I am like I was born in the wrong decade. I should have been in my teens and 20s in the '80s, doing coke and listening to Echo and the Bunnymen at fucking Emerald City in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, just fucking going ham. But yeah, it's actually something that I had the same thing growing up. It was like at fucking 9, 10 o'clock, parents were like, "Yo, in or out?" And I was like, "All right, out." And we went out and we went ballistic. My mom could whistle louder than anyone on the fucking face of the earth. I could be 3 towns over and I hear that whistle. I'm like, "Yo, I gotta get the fuck home. It's time to go in. We're done."
Mom's calling. Yeah. No,
Yeah, but I mean, we were left to our own devices. I mean, I was, like 8 years old. I'm like, I'm gonna go to the food mart, grab a
remember
candy bar or some shit.
I remember the first time that I experienced helicopter parenting. I was probably about 15 or 16, and there was down the street from us, probably, I don't know, we lived in a cul-de-sac. They were probably about halfway down the street. There was this family, and their kid would come out. He was like 13. He was a little bit younger than us. He was my brother's age. And he would come and he'd hang out with us in the cul-de-sac. And it seemed like every 2 hours his dad was out whistling for him to come home. And it was like, what the fuck? And you could hear him as he came running down the street. "I'm right here." And his dad, "Where have you been?" And you're like, dude, what kind of bullshit is this? And I never did that to my kids. They wanted to go outside. I'm like, "All right, man, you go outside." I might walk out the front door every once in a while and check and make sure that, everything's okay and nobody's fucking killing each other. But, they're out there having fun, playing with their friends, riding their bikes, whatever, man. Don't get hit by a car. Have fun.
Like George Carlin said, whatever happened to a kid sitting in the backyard with a fucking stick? You sat there with a fucking stick and you dug a fucking hole. What happened to that? Like, I know that makes me sound like, like some old get off my lawn kind of dude, but honestly, I think there is absolutely a correlation between the freedom that we used to have as kids versus the absolute lack of freedom that the next generation experienced, and this whole "I'm going to put my parents in jail" fucking kind of mindset. It's mind-blowing to me. It's why, like, I have felt so alienated from most people my own age all of my friends are at least like 5 years older than I am, because they were at the, like, just right before all of this, like, for lack of a better term, pussification happened. Like, my buddy Joey worked his fucking ass off to get everything he has, and like I did the same thing. And I'm looking at like the kids my age that are like, oh, the government should like cancel my student loans, and it's like, bitch, you signed the contract. It's not my fault you fucking got a garbage degree. Why is it my job to pay it off? Well, they'll just cancel it. There's no such thing as canceling. All you're doing is shifting that burden onto my shoulders and all of the other producers,
or your kids' shoulders, or your kids' shoulders. You
know,
I was talking to a friend of ours the other day, in a group chat, and I was like, look, man, I was like, imagine this. I was like, your daughter is, let's just put it this way. My granddaughter is 1 year old, right? Her children are already in debt. That is fucking insanity.
Oh yeah. I mean, the second I was born, I owed the federal government like something like $70,000 or $80,000.
I think
that number has grown significantly. We printed like 6 trillion last year.
Yeah, it absolutely has. Well, before last year, I had looked, and it was a child born, I think it was in 2017, was born owing the federal government $255,000.
Jesus fucking Christ. And like nobody thinks like that. Okay. And then it just, it's just, they're like, oh, well, we're never going to pay it. And it's like, yeah, but that should bother you. It should bother you that your child owes $250,000 the second it enters the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, you're essentially birthing a serf class.
Yeah.
Now I would remember I was talking to my dad, and it was like after I started getting into libertarianism, and we're talking, and I had quoted that meme to him, name one thing that's not taxed, regulated, or illegal. And he was like, you know what? You're right. If I walked up to anybody, if I talk to anybody my age right now and ask them if we're more free today than we were when we were kids, they would say absolutely fucking not. No fucking way. And I wonder, do you think that this was the inevitable result of the technology that we're seeing in society today? Do you think it was, obviously Brzezinski has been writing about the technocratic state since the 50s. You had A Brave New World. Aldous Huxley called it a blueprint for the future. Do you think they were so actively designing this, or do you just think it was inevitable?
It's strange. I almost think it's like a combination of the two. I read this great article a while back about why libertarian science fiction is some of the best science fiction. And it's because since we're always dreaming of ways to innovate and change things for the better, like libertarian science fiction tends to have a better imagination when it comes to what the future could be. And with that, it also has a very rational approach to how that same technology can be used negatively. It's where you get your Orwells, your Huxleys, and you see these things in practice. And sometimes it sure feels like the government is just like, hey man, Orwell was on to something. Fucking Big Brother. That sounds dope. What if we could just see fucking everything? Then boom, like Patriot Act, and we're like, what the fuck? But I think that it's almost like humans and dogs. Like the state and technology have evolved alongside each other, and it was just like, yeah, buddy, you're gonna help me. You're gonna help me out. You're gonna help me spy on that fucking guy in New Jersey. That motherfucker. I want to see what he's up to. Let's read his phone calls. Let's see who he's talking to. That's and I think it was kind of like that, because Google started off as just like a couple of dudes that were like, hey man, let's make a search engine. And now it's just like, hey man, let's fucking drive public opinion. And the state, being what it is, has been in bed with them long enough that they're now basically one entity. What we've all been referring to as the cathedral. And I think the marriage of the two was inevitable, for sure. I think the state and technology becoming one force was inevitable. You have your wild cards like your Elon Musks that, yes, like he accepts he has accepted government funding to put towards his projects and whatnot. And it's like, I get that. But I think he's one of like the only ones that's like, I want to make this tech for the reasons I want to fucking make it. Whereas Google has an agenda, Facebook has an agenda, Twitter has an agenda, and it just so happens that all of their agendas happen to be fucking progressivism. And the state's like, yes, progressivism good, dependency good. Everyone should depend on the state. And that's why we're printing money at this rate. That's why your kid owes $250,000 the second he comes out of your snatch. That's why we're at where we're at here in January of 2021.
Well, I had a thought while you were going through that rant. And
yeah.
No, reality television made it okay. The Real World on MTV, getting to sit there and snoop in on everybody in their life for those 3 weeks or that month or however long they were living together, made it seem cool to actually
spy on people.
Yeah.
Because it was like, ooh, because you know what it is? Mass surveillance is basically just state voyeurism.
Yeah.
And reality television was normalizing voyeurism to the masses, where it was like, hey, it's okay that we spy on you. It's just like your own little episode of The Real World.
Right.
Yeah, there's some drama. Maybe you have a little fling with somebody. But it's just your own little episode of The Real World.
Yeah.
Never mind that we're going to send state agents to throw you in a fucking cage, put you up against the wall, and execute you. But, hey, it's just like The Real World. Or fucking, what was that one? I Love New York on VH1. Some ass dating show. And the only reason I know that is because at that time when that show was out, I was young enough and dumb enough and there was nothing else on TV that I watched that garbage. And now that you mention it, yeah, I mean, it's reality television. It was basically just programming to be like, yeah, no, it's totally okay to just like watch people living their lives. And I think that ultimately bred if you're doing nothing wrong, then what have you got to worry about?
Right.
Kind of mentality.
Well, and then you look at the sitcoms in the 2000s, especially late 90s, early 2000s. They were almost set up as reality television. If you watch like Everybody Loves Raymond or Seinfeld, and they almost felt like reality television in the way that they were designed.
Yeah, it was presenting it almost as if you were watching this from the outside, but not in like a clear distinction between reality and television kind of way, but in a very immersive, personal kind of way.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that was purposeful, truthfully.
Well, I mean, we know that the CIA, FBI all work hand in hand with Hollywood constantly.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they have their own department, of the CIA to feed information. So who knows what kind of ideas are coming out of there.
Yeah. Okay. Makes me glad I haven't had cable in years.
I can't remember the last time I watched television.
Feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good to say that.
I was never a fan of TV anyway. It was just like, oh, whatever. It's just something there, and then, once I started my podcast, I was stuck in a hotel for 3 days, the weekend before, because my truck was getting worked on. So I watched football for the first time in probably like 6 years,
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, once I started podcasting, I spend all my time reading and listening to other podcasts and researching and studying and trying to figure out what the hell's going on and what my intended audience like could utilize and use in their own lives, you know?
Yeah, and what's great about filling your time with that kind of stuff, like especially podcasts. Like I listen to Pete's show, I listen to Tom Woods. I have like a rotation I go through. You know, I kind of bounce around. But it's like they're entertaining, but you're also learning at the same time. There's tons of great information out there, and it's like instead of watching some mindless bullshit, you can listen to an entertaining podcast where you're laughing, you're having a good time, but you're also gaining useful information. And to your point, actually, about the reality television shit and trying to influence people that way, that reminds me, back in 2014, Facebook, and it blows my mind. Actually, me and my buddy were just talking about this a few weeks ago. Facebook selected a little over 500,000 people on the website.
Oh, I know where you're going.
And they took some of them and started feeding them only negative posts, only negative stuff, bad news, deaths, bombings, etc. And then they took another subset of people and fed them more positive stuff, like, oh, this fucking puppy is cute, and like all this just like more positive shit. And they got outed for it. They were like, hey, you were straight up manipulating the news for over 500,000 people, trying to influence their emotions because you just wanted to. And they were just like, yeah, no, we did it, and we're sorry. We're going to not do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yep.
There was no follow-up. There was no media coverage. There was no outrage. There were like a handful of people that were like, yo, dude, did you maybe think that like one of the people you were feeding negative information to was somebody that was already battling depression or suicidal thoughts, and you just completely made the world seem even bleaker for somebody? But they don't give a shit.
No.
And they still have done. They have not been held accountable for this.
Oh, absolutely not.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a federal program.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised if it was an extension of MK Ultra or Operation Mockingbird. And
Yeah.
if I remember right, it was explained that it was a social experiment done on unwitting individuals to be able to design algorithms that would keep people engaged on the website so that they could gather more information about you, so they had more data to sell.
Yeah, and I'm sure they ultimately learned that anger generates more likes and shares than
that was exactly what it was.
Than cute dogs or whatever. And that's why all of the conservatives see more articles from liberal news sources and things that would piss them off, or things from, like, quote, far right websites where it's like, like they see more QAnon type shit and they're like, yeah, they read the headline, they share it, and they all get into a big circle jerk. And that generates interaction. And interaction generates data for Facebook to sell to advertisers.
Right.
And they do this for the conservatives and the liberals. The liberals get to see all this shit about how UBI is amazing and all this stuff.
And how everybody's a white supremacist.
Yep. Oh, all of the identity politics goes right to them. And you can see how the cathedral's messaging has changed. In the case of, like, whenever there's a shooting, it'll be like white cop shoots black man in altercation.
Mm-hmm.
But if a black cop shoots a black man or a black cop shoots a white man, it'll be like
cop.
It'll be like officer shoots man in dispute. They completely leave race out of it unless the officer is white.
Right.
And again, and I'm not defending cops. I kind of despise them as an institution, but I'm just using, this is one of the more obvious examples that we've seen in the current socio-political climate about.
Oh yeah, you're definitely being manipulated by the way that they're presenting
Yeah.
stories. Definitely.
Oh yeah. And I mean, the fact that the DC riots in June, was it last year? June?
Yeah.
Where there were flames and pillars of smoke in DC.
Right.
Mostly peaceful.
Yeah.
But the fucking senior citizens bus getting lost on its way to Atlantic City and ending up in DC is a fucking insurrection. Get the fuck out of here. They were like, where's Bally's?
I call it the great boomer tour of 2021.
The BoomerCon tour of 2021.
Yeah. It's kind of like the blue collar comedy tour. It's the great boomer capital tour.
Yeah, I mean, like the fact that they're like, oh, these were right wing extremists. Did you see the picture of that fucking old lady with her mask on, just like, I'm at the Capitol? Like, I'm sorry, if that's an insurrection, okay, then the security there was abysmal, because if they couldn't stop fucking Gertrude from shuffling in with her walker with the tennis balls on the fucking feet, then I don't know what to tell you besides hire a different firm.
That's no doubt, man. And I did hear that the chief of the Capitol Police actually requested for backup 6 times prior to the entire event, and every time,
because that wouldn't be good optics.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be good optics.
And who makes that call? That's Congress. Congress makes that call.
It wouldn't be good optics. Yet for the inauguration, they have the entire National Guard there.
Exactly.
Amazing.
That looked great.
It was that's okay optics, but it wasn't when the insurrection was happening.
I mean, fucking DC looked like Rwanda.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ.
All right, man. We're running right at an hour, man. Like, so
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up with any other information you got, and make sure you plug everything you got.
Yeah, I think the most important thing right now is do your research, reach out to people that you know and trust, and see what platforms they're on. You know, a lot of us are on Signal. I also have a Telegram account because you never know when either one of them is going to go down. I prefer Signal, but I like having Telegram for a backup. Check out CryptPad for file sharing, document sharing. There's several other alternatives for social media right now. MeWe's popular, but it's really not decentralized, and they've already kind of started doing some censorship. So likely you're going to want to look for some alternatives there. But ultimately, the important thing to remember is that all of these major media platforms are going to remove you if they see you as, quote, dangerous enough. So it's important to kind of build a network now with people you can, even if it's just people you've met online, you know, just mutual friends. You both share each other's memes or whatever. Like, that's a good person to just be like, hey, let's stay in touch on some other platforms. Because I think things are going to get pretty wacky in the near future, and having that line of communication is going to be super important. But it's not all black-pilled. Everything that's been happening, despite all of this, I've also seen a lot of positive. I've seen a lot of people coming together in the ways I've described, which is giving me a lot of hope. So keep your chin up, grow your network, grow some food if you can, and kind of just start working towards some sort of autonomy in any way you can. And also, if for some reason you need graphics designed, or if you like libertarian science fiction, you can read my book or have me make graphics for you at ryanbunting.com.
Yeah, we got to support our own. RyanBunting.com. He is an official sponsor of Year Zero. And you know, we barter back and forth. He gets ads, I get graphic design. So it works out well for both of us. He not only
Algorithm at work, baby.
Yeah, he not only designed my podcast logo, he also designed my book cover whenever I do finally finish that. And you know, I'm almost done. I swear I got like 5 more stories I'm working on, but like I'm just kind of like whittling through them, and I've been so busy the last 3 weeks. I haven't even looked at it, but I am going to get through it, and it will be out, you know, before 2024.
Good.
But I got to get it done because I got another book I want to start writing, and this one's going to be
that feeling.
Going to be really intense. So, but yeah, man, keep up with Ryan. Where can they reach out to you if they want to ask you any questions about the technology?
You can find me on Twitter. You can try to track me down on Facebook, though I'm probably less receptive to randoms there. But you can get me on Twitter, just at Ryan A. Bunting. And you can find me on MeWe. Just look for the picture of the guy that looks like he's from New Jersey sitting on a rock. That'll be me. Track me down on MeWe. And, you know, just reach out, or you can even go through Tommy, go through any of his people and be like, hey, put me in touch with that guy, and they'll send you my way.
All right, man. Hang on 1 second. I'm just going to cut this off.
Said you're just a slave. All your good intentions took you to your grave. Your pride is how they killed you. With the flag you wave just like a fool. They promised you a mountain, gifted you a stone. They demanded that you throw it into your neighbor's home, and then seize all that they worked for and give it to the throne just like a tool. Well, as we all just stand in line and glorify new ways of being cruel, it seems to me humanity is not something that they're teaching us in school. They dumbs down all around, propaganda, their pollution. They set a cage up on the stage, a facade for all solution. They build a wall, block them all from this mental institution. It's insane. Now they're writing their own rule books and they're crossing all their T's. They're fashioning their people to all wear beggars' knees. If you want a clean drink of water, well, you must say pretty please. It's all a game. As we all just stand in line and justify these crimes done in our names, it seems to me authority and tyranny are both one and the same. Change a channel, it's time to set things right. Make them all rot with fear in their beds at night. Devour all their worthless souls and sacrificial right, just like we should. Cause this world needs a cleansing to burn away the shame and destroy all the remnants of those who are to blame. And we'll stack them up like cordwood, watch them sizzle on the flames for good. Well, as we all just stand in line waiting for some kind of Robin Hood, our liberty will never ever be until our right to freedom is understood. Thank you.